Today, mathematicians, we will analyze word problems in order to determine unnecessary information and then calculate the solutions. Mathematicians, I want you to look at these three pictures. Which one does not belong and why? When you have an idea, please raise your virtual hand. How about this one, mathematicians? Look closely. This one's a little bit more challenging, but which one doesn't belong, and what is your reason why? Now let's try one with shapes. When you have an idea about which one doesn't belong and you can explain why, raise your virtual hand. Boys and girls, just like we just did with some of the picture clues, we're going to do the same thing with word problems. We're going to read word problems, and we're going to figure out what information is not necessary to solve the problem. Follow along as I read the first problem aloud. Miss Cox's class is collecting pennies for the penny war. Aiden brings in 3 pennies. Jack contributes 4. Chase has 2 quarters. Crystal brings 6 pennies. How many pennies does Miss Cox's class add to the penny war's jars? We're going to use our strategy of KFC to help us figure out what information is important and what information is not necessary to solve the problem. Let's think about what we know. We know that Aiden brings in 3 pennies. We know that Jack contributes 4. We know that Chase brings in 2 quarters and Crystal brings in 6 pennies. When we think about what we know, now let's think about what we need to find out. We need to find out how many pennies are going to be added to the penny war jar. So that tells us that the fact that Chase brings 2 quarters, that information is not needed. Now that we know that Aiden brings 3 pennies, Jack brings 4, and Crystal brings 6, we can now have enough information to answer the question. The final thing we need to do is to consider the operation that we will use. What operation do you think we should use? Show us on your arms. I see a lot of friends gesturing addition. You are correct. We would add up all of the pennies in order to figure out how many pennies our class contributed. 3 plus 4 plus 6. When you think you have the answer, type it in the chat. All right, let's move on to another one. Miss Templeton is collecting books. There are 327 missing books. Destin turns in 3 books. Destin's books were all mystery books. Audrey turns in 4 books, which were fantasy. How many books are still missing? Again, we're going to use our strategy of KFC. Let's think about what we know. We know that there are 327 missing books. We know that Destin turns in 3 books, and they're mysteries. And Audrey turns in 4 books, and they're fantasy. And our question is, how many more books are still missing? So we know that there are 327 missing books, Destin turns in 3, and Audrey turns in 4. And we need to find out how many books are still missing. In this case, the piece of information is just added information as a minor detail to make the problem a little bit more interesting. Telling us that Destin's books were mysteries and Audrey's books were fantasies does not help us to solve the problem, so we can ignore that information. The final thing we need to do is we need to consider what operation or operations we would need to use to solve the problem. In this case, we will need to use subtraction. Or some of you might have been thinking addition and subtraction would also be correct. So if Destin and Audrey together turned in 7 books, we would need to subtract 7 from 327 to figure out that there are still 320 books missing. All right, friends, I want you to try this one on your own after we read it. Go ahead in your notebook and draw a KFC chart. I'm going to read the problem and then I want you to think about what information do you know? What do you need to find out? And that will help you determine what piece of information is not needed to solve this problem. Miss J wants to plant a vegetable garden. She has some friends coming to help her plant. She wants to plant 6 plants in each row. Noah helps her plant 3 rows. Gabriella plants 2 rows. Sophia goes to the store and buys 12 plants. Kiave plants 1 row. How many total plants are in Miss J's garden after everyone plants the vegetables? All right, friends, I want you to think about what information do you know from reading this problem? What is Miss J asking us to find out? That will help you to figure out what piece of information is not needed to solve this problem. All right, go ahead and work this problem on your own. We'll give you a few minutes and then we'll be ready to share and go over the problem together.